So this movie promised to deliver horror, action, crime and thriller all under one title, and it definitely pulled them all off. Very quickly, if you enjoy the cut of my jib, consider hitting subscribe. Not only will it keep you up to date with the latest movies I cover here, but you're going to make my day. But that being said, let's get on with this one. The Price We Pay. So The Price We Pay stood out to me for two reasons. One, it was hitting on all these genres, so I was very curious to see if it could kind of nail them all and spend enough time in each of them, which it does, and I'll come on to that. And secondly, it's got my man Emile Hirsch in here. Now, he's popped up a good few times on this channel in the movies I've been watching, and every single time he's got a stellar performance, so I was very excited to see him pop up again. So as this movie opens, bear with it, and what I mean by that is, it opens on some very bad audio. You know, where they're speaking English, and it's English you're hearing, but it doesn't sound like it's the people talking.
Here's the thing. I'm dropping your ass off out here.
The hell you are? You said you would drive me back to town.
Like, the rest of the movie's not like that. So why it's like that at the start, I'm not quite sure why they had to kind of redub it. Doing it at the start of the movie is risky, because you kind of want to turn it off, but just stay with it. The movie does that thing where it opens up on quite a thrilling start, but then we just cut to our leads. It will be relevant later, but it's not carrying on straight from that. So here we've got the gang of misfits, and they're doing a pawnshop robbery. Unfortunately, this is going down at the same time that Grace is walking in here to just have a bit of a dispute with the owner of the shop. She gets kind of caught in the crossfire a little bit. From this scene, all you need to know is the robbery happens, and these guys, along with Grace, just need to fucking get out of here. They don't quite know where they're going, but they need to lay low and get out of here fast, because they caused a lot of noise. So whilst they're out in the travels, we start getting a little bit of dialogue from the gang, because they don't quite know what to do with Grace, and that then spurs on to the conversations where they're not in agreement. You know, there's infighting between these three people. And if you've been here long enough, you're going to know that I love to see that when you do see a group of criminals, because when they all agree, it gets very boring and stale. Whereas, see when they disagree, it is a group of very immoral people, but they're kind of competing for whose morals are better. I just find that sort of stuff very compelling. It's not spent a lot of time on it here, but see just throughout the conversation, you can see that it's clearly adding up to something. After a drive, these chaps end up at a barn, and there's some shady shit going down at this barn. They talk their way into getting a free room, but the boy that's here living and working away in the barn, he's not really wanting them to stay. Not just because he doesn't want them for his own safety, clearly there's a little bit more going on. You know, the boy's granddad's away. When the granddad gets home, the boy's afraid. So you know something's going on. And that really takes us up to the end of like the first act of this movie. It's a difficult one to talk about, because talking about it more, it's going to lend itself to kind of specifics and spoil these reveals as they come through the movie. But all I could really say is that whilst we do begin the movie and we're following these three criminals and they end up at this barn, the movie after the first act doesn't really have a main character. I know there's two titled here on the cover of the movie, but you're not following them strictly. Because see, when the granddad comes back, it's not just the granddad that comes back. Whilst we had been dealing with criminals up until now, there's also some not so nice people here in the barn. You can't argue that nobody in this movie is a good guy. You know, some might deserve things, some definitely don't. You know, when you're just following the main character, then a pivotal moment happens, and then suddenly the movie kind of becomes something else. That's what you get here with The Price We Pay. It was a bold choice and one that definitely paid off in this movie. What I can say without lending myself to spoilers is some of the kills in this movie, I told you this movie had horror and action, so you're going to expect a few of them, but some of the kills are the most unique kills I have ever seen in a movie. Were they fully realistic and believable? That's questionable. You might need to suspend your disbelief a little bit. Were they fun to watch? You fucking bet they were. The movie starts leaning into this kind of campy aspect for the later portion of it. I'm not against it. It worked here very well, considering we're following a few different people and none of them were really stealing the spotlight at any point. One of them is ex-military, so he's treating it like an operation where everyone needs to be kind of on their best behaviour and following the plan. You've got one that likes to go a little bit rogue. He is one of these no loose ends sort of characters. The likes of Grace, and sparking that conversation was that they should get rid of her, whereas Military Man was not for that. You know, he doesn't want extra casualties where there doesn't need to be. And then there's a bit of a straggler who is kind of torn between the two of them because he just wants to get out of all this alive, but he also doesn't want to piss the two of them off and pick a side necessarily. But as I said, the movie delivers on the genres at once. The movie not only kicks off with action, that's sprinkled throughout the rest of the movie. Horror, watch it, you can't disagree. It is definitely some horror in here. Definitely thrilling because you don't know what's going to happen next. And crime, yeah, there's some crime throughout the whole of this movie, not just with that robbery. It's keeping to all four of them and juggling that very well in this movie. But it does feel a little bit old school horror camp as we get kind of really towards the end and start driving to that finale. Think The Hills Have Eyes. the original, of course. It just has that sort of campy where you can't argue it's a horror and scary, but you know when you watch it now, it does just have that kind of cheese to it. This is a modern movie that feels like it's got the cheese of The Hills Have Eyes. So look, with all that being said, what would I be saying about the price we pay? If you're looking for a movie that is either one or all four of those genres, make time for The Price We Pay. You know, it's paced very well, given the fact that we go from the robbery to the barn to the final acts of the movie. It keeps changing pace. You know, it keeps changing scenario, and the story just keeps unfolding as it goes on. Not understanding either the situation or people's motivation. The performances in here were all really good. As I said, there's not strictly a main character in the movie, but the two that are on the cover of the movie, they've got the best performances for sure. I'd expect no less from a man Emile. He just keeps popping up, so now when I see his face, I'll watch the movie. He's yet to prove me wrong. It is campy, but in a good way. It is gory, in an overly gory and quite cheesy way. You watch the movie, you'll know exactly what I mean by that. But suspend your disbelief just a little bit, enough to get through this movie, and you can have a good time with this horror. You will not guess what the fuck is going on, I can tell you that much. Have you watched The Price We Pay? If we agree or disagree, let me know. And if you haven't yet, consider hitting subscribe. It just keeps you up to date with these movies I'm reviewing to add to your watch list, and you're going to make my day. But with all that now been said, as always, thank you so much for watching.